Previously on Convicted.
Well, this event in 1996, Baltimore City, and an entire city wanted justice.
My brother wouldn't kill a fly, much less his daughter. My God.
But I know a Brady violation when I see one, and this is pretty clearly a Brady violation.
When I received the appointment from the federal court, it came with the judge's statement that he believed this was a case of actual innocence.
This call is from
Richard Nicolas,
an inmate at a Maryland correctional facility.
Richard Nicolas was convicted of killing his 2-year-old daughter in the summer of 1996. Since that time, Mr. Nicolas continues to maintain his innocence. I'm Brooke. This is Convicted. Episode 2. The story of Richard Nicolas. Richard was born in Baltimore City. The word city isn't part of the name, but I've noticed that the people who live in the area tend to add it on. Shortly after he was born, the family moved to Canada and then Haiti before returning to Baltimore, meaning that Richard's first language was French.
I knew him when he couldn't speak English. All he was speaking was French.
Just a reminder, this is Richard's Aunt Gloria.
Well, see, they were living in Canada, Rochester, New York, and then they went to Canada. Their father worked there, and he spoke French all the time because he was from Haiti, and they spoke French. And his grandfather was an ambassador from Haiti to the United States.
Oh, wow. We're going to take a short break to talk about our sponsor. I was just talking to my friend Charlie from the podcast Insight about our upcoming conference in Indianapolis. I was struggling because my favorite shirt has gotten a hole and I couldn't find another one anywhere, in any store, in my size. Charlie laughed and told me that she had tons of clothes picked out to go, but the baby growing inside of her belly had made them all too tight. We found a solution that helped both of us. Laytote. It's a fashion subscription box that sends brand name clothing and accessories right to your door for one low monthly fee. I was able to find a shirt I loved. Plus, it's perfect if you're expecting, because they have maternity totes. Because Charlie's clothing size is going to be changing for 9 months, she doesn't have to buy maternity clothes that she'll never wear again. The box was shipped right to my door, and it was filled with clothes that fit me and my style. To get your tote, go to laytote.com. That's LETOTE.com to get started for as low as $39 a month. If you enter promo code CONVICTED at checkout, you can get 50% off your first month. Once you sign up, you'll receive your completely customized tote within days. You can wear what you want, return everything in the mail when you're done, and repeat all month long. Again, that's laytote.com. Enter code CONVICTED. And feel fabulous with fashion delivered right to your door. We heard briefly from Richard's sister in the last episode.
My name is Mary Tate, and I am Richard Nicolas's baby sister. He sends me mail, and he addresses it sis. And I think, okay, well, the entire Postal Service must know that sis comes to my house.
That's right. Her name is Mary. But throughout my exploration of this case, I had heard her referred to by 3 separate names.
My grandmother, my name is Mary Elizabeth Tate, and my grandmother dubbed me Betty, which I have never been able to shake. And as a teenager, I really, really did not like the name Betty. So I asked my father, could I change my name? So we decided to come up with the name Kisa, which has more significance to me, and I never went through the official name change. Then when I became an adult and that stuff was no longer important to me, I just went back to Mary.
I call her Mary, but to clear up any more confusion, it's one sister, 3 names. At my request, Mary told me what Richard was like as a child, a question I hope that my own brother is never asked about on a podcast.
He was your typical boy. You know, we weren't from the United States. So when we came here, I guess I was about maybe 6 and Richard was 7. So we had a language barrier. My father was Haitian, my mother was American, but she spoke French. So it was a difficult adjustment for my brother and I to acclimate to the American society quickly, because it wasn't a matter of, okay, I'm going to teach you English and then you go to school. It's you're in school. So it was a difficult adjustment. My brother had a speech impediment. So not only was learning the English language difficult, but he stuttered. I was always hyper protective of him because people would tease him, and that would take me from 0 to 60. You know, I'm not a fighting person. I think the only fights I've ever gotten in were girls picking on my brother, because my brother wouldn't hit a woman. He was always very, very intelligent, but his speech impediment was a major, major issue. And I remember that he went to see a speech pathologist at Sinai for many years. And my father would work with him on the weekends and in the evenings to help him. I remember something about my father used to put marbles in his mouth and have him speak.
She then tells the story that you heard on the previous episode about Richard's father trying to correct his speech by placing marbles in his mouth. I couldn't find a modern-day speech therapist who supported this method, but I did find some interesting reading on Demosthenes, an ancient Greek orator who tried to improve his own speech using a similar tactic.
The significant part of the childhood was the marbles and the reading. But Richard, had friends. We were very close to the neighbor. We did everything typical kids did. We played outside till the street lights came on, and we got into fights. We broke up each other's stuff. We defended each other from our parents. If one did something bad, we wouldn't tell, so we both get a spanking. We were just your typical siblings. I remember some really golden moments when we were growing up. When we were in elementary school, the girls always loved him because of those big eyes, those big green eyes. They're very captivating. And it just seemed like the girls always loved him. And my mother used to tell him that you must take your sister home and you must hold her hand. So we were latchkey children, so we took the bus home. And, my brother wanted to talk to the girls, and I would say, Mommy said you better take me home. So yeah, he was rotten, I was rotten. It was a challenge sometimes. But he would have to hold my hand, and I remember we'd walk up the hill to our house. I would be fighting him to let my hand go, and he said, Mommy said hold your hand, I'm going to tell Mama. So it was, we did some crazy stuff. We had one incident where we had an alarm on our house, and the rule was the first child in the house had to turn off the alarm. Mm-hmm. Well, my brother and I decided that day that we weren't speaking to each other, and we weren't going to have anything to do with each other. So we got into the house, and the alarm was going off, and it just got worse and worse. It went from the internal alarm to the external alarm, the siren on the outside of the house. And from that, somebody, God forbid, called my mother. And my mother came home along with my father, along with the police, because they're thinking something's happened to these children. And my brother and I are sitting there like, oh my God, somebody's going to get the whipping of a lifetime. We both got the whipping of a lifetime. But it was just, we had some crazy memories. I think that was probably the worst spanking I've ever gotten in my life, when everyone had to come out to see what was going on with the house alarm. So yeah, we had some great times. We had some sibling times, and we had some great times.
Richard has mentioned 2 causes for his stuttering: learning a new language and a birthing accident. While it's largely unknown what causes stuttering, it's believed that a primary cause is neurological, having to do with the brain. Specifically, in this instance, a problem with how the brain translates thoughts into words. So could that process have been damaged by a baby doctor squeezing his head? Maybe.
I remember this one argument we had back when we were down in Baltimore, because she was fussing with me because she had said that she was supposed to take care of me because of my speech impediment. My sister used to do a whole lot of fist fighting for me over at elementary school, because guys would beat me up because I couldn't talk. And I remember Dad started taking me to health spas, weightlifting, so that I could gain some weight. Also taking me to taekwondo courses, because I was like getting my ass kicked over at elementary school. And she would take up for her big brother. Dad had us going to Catholic private school, and this was a good school that I'm still thankful for, because I can see the advantage even here. We had gotten into a argument because she was like, "I'm supposed to take care of you because you're my big brother," and it's. I remember she told Mom that I'm not letting her take care of me, and Mom got a big kick out of it. Told Dad. Both of them started laughing at us, and here I am, 50 years old, and she's still taking care of me.
Like half of all marriages, Richard's parents' marriage ended in divorce, and at least part of the reason for their parting of ways was due to his mother's mental health.
My mom was bipolar, and she, I watched her suffer with it, but she also worked very hard to take care of herself. First off, she used to play the viola, and she had gone to the Peabody Institute. She had also gone to Coppin State College, where she was a elementary school teacher after college, and she also taught home and hospital special ed kids, like say for example, if you have a high school kid that gets hurt out on the football field and he can't go to school for 6 months, she would go to his house and educate him. Plus, she's had students that were underprivileged, and she was sent over there by the city to get these kids up to speed so that they can go enter into the public school system. She was not a bad person. I watched her take care of things that she had to take care of, and she went to school and did well for herself. I had also watched her have her rough spots, but it's bipolar.
Right, and I think I told you before, like, my day job is a therapist, so I've worked with very successful people who have bipolar disorder, and they have their hard moments, but it's not a life sentence that you're doomed. You can definitely have a productive life.
I agree, and she very definitely did.
Mary's description of their mother was similar, but framed by hindsight, the way that childhood memories often are.
She did. She did. She did. She didn't let it hold her back, but she, I remember the day she left. She said that my mother was a very black and white type of person. It either was or it wasn't. And I never really understood that about her. She said that based on her doctor's thoughts, it's better that she live alone, not have the encumbrances of children. And I never understood that as a child, because I thought, we're not encumbrances, we're your children. So my mother moved out, and my father took us. And my mother actually moved to the end of the block to live. She rented an apartment from a friend in a house, so she was never that far away. But it was difficult, because I just wondered why you didn't want us anymore.
Yeah, it's hard when you're alone.
Yeah, and it wasn't that she didn't want us. She knew that with her disorder, it would be difficult to raise adolescents, because we were challenged. So she did what was best and healthy for her, but I didn't understand that till years later.
I was shocked when I discovered that Richard had dropped out of high school.
All of them had kind of dropped out of regular high school to go to this experimental school that was supposed to be something different and new, and I don't think any of them really got an education from there. They had fun, and I think it was just a big mistake for all of them, but at the same time, it was this group of people that fed off each other because they all grew up together.
It was true, Richard said. He did drop out of high school.
Yes, I did. I was always a very strong, bull-headed kid, and and my sophomore year, I started smoking pot and drinking beer and hanging with the neighborhood fellows, and I just dropped out of school. It wasn't anything that my parents did or did not do. I was just a hard-headed boy, and I've been going to the neighborhood bar since I was 16 or 17. Bar fighting since I've been 16 or 17. So I've always been a big, strong, hard-headed kid. It's not that I was a bad kid, because we didn't do bad things past drinking beer and smoking pot and fist fighting. But it's that's the kind of kid I was. So eventually I dropped out of high school, and when I was 17, I got into an argument with my dad. He was unhappy, and he was like, well, you got to go, kid. So I was like, okay, and I don't think that he expected this. He had thought that I was gonna, buckle under, but I packed up my bag and moved out of the house at 17. Went out, got a full-time job, and didn't come back home.
After obtaining his GED and a few college courses later, Richard found himself in a failing marriage. When I asked him about the marriage, he asked me if I'd ever heard the saying, "I didn't really have a problem with my wife. It was her boyfriend that was the problem." He said it went something like that. Looking through some old articles on the case, I found one in the Baltimore Sun that claims that Richard had struck his ex-wife prior to their divorce. So I asked him about it.
If Debbie had divorced me, grounds being abuse, there wasn't ever a police report, hospital visit, or anything indicating that. It was her final kick in the teeth for me as we were signing the paperwork, and I didn't think about the fact that was going to follow me, because it's to be honest with you, I really didn't know any better. Debbie was my first wife. However, I was her fourth husband. So I met her when I was 23, 24, and she was 30-something, early 30s. And it's again, that didn't dawn on me until after we had split up, that she was, so young, and I was her fourth husband. It's at that age, I really didn't think about it.
Do you want me to read you what it says?
Sure.
Okay, it says, there were other troubles. Deborah Nicolas says her husband was diagnosed in 1992 with clinical depression, and she alleged that in their 1993 divorce case that her husband threatened her and struck her repeatedly with his fist.
When did I get diagnosed with clinical depression?
It says in 92.
In 92? Okay. Never happened.
No?
No.
I think you would probably know if anybody knew, right?
That's how come I'm asking, because I've never heard this.
I want to make myself clear here. Charges were never filed, and there's no evidence of marital abuse. As hard as it is to say these words, even if he was in an abusive relationship, that doesn't make him guilty of murder.
Both of us struggled in high school because we were very different from the kids we went to school with. And there was a lot of racial prejudice then. So, we dealt with not fitting in. My brother, I got picked on because I didn't look a certain way or didn't talk a certain way. My brother kind of was like, I don't care about everybody. I'm going to paint my nails black and do what I want and wear my black Sabbath t-shirts. And we just weren't a good fit for the school we went to. So he dropped out, and then I dropped out. And then he just wanted to live life his way. And my father said, that's fine, but you can't do it here. So he became emancipated and took care of himself. So, which still kind of floors me that he was able to do that at such a young age.
I asked him about what was he like as a teenager. He said, I was a bullheaded kid.
He was. But you know what? It came from my dad, because my father, if he said that this table was white and I see that it's brown, it didn't give a damn what you thought, because you're stupid. It's white. So that's how Richard is. It is either it is or it's everybody's stupid. So, you know, that has probably protected him in many situations, because he's always been a survivor. You know, I don't believe he's ever not had a meal or not had a roof over his head. So I think he decided at a young age when he left that I'm going to live life my way and I'm going to be okay. And I don't think I could ever have that kind of courage.
In his late 20s, Richard had 2 jobs that came with a moderate level of responsibility.
Back then, I was working for a third-party copier company. They were called Copy Fix, and we had the service contract for Aberdeen and Edgewood Army bases, and I handled all of their Xerox brand photocopiers. I had gotten my EMT certification and went to work for a private ambulance company, TLC. They were out in Baltimore County. Worked there for a short period of time, got some experience. Then I got myself hired by American ambulance company, and primarily worked on their graveyard shift.
Through the course of his employment on the ambulance, he met Asia's mother. If you haven't noticed, I haven't mentioned Asia's mother's name, but sometimes the people that I'm interviewing do. So I'm going to tell you, it's Lisa. But please, leave this woman alone. She's had enough heartbreak.
I met Lisa over at Johns Hopkins ER. She was one of the health insurance processors, and one night when I was dropping someone off, we got to talking, and I had asked her out. She said no. I left, hopped back into the ambulance, and kept on, on the next service call. And at the end of the shift, I was talking to my dispatcher, and he had said that someone called from Johns Hopkins saying that I had left one of my credit cards down there and that I need to go pick it up. So I was like, okay, especially since I don't have any credit cards on me, but I'll go down there and see what's going on. So when I went down there, Lisa was down there waiting for me, and she gave me her phone number and all of her contact information. So we got to talking to each other over the phone, and eventually, went to bed with each other. And it's that was about it.
Asia's mother testified that Richard had suggested an abortion, but Richard stands firm that he left the choice of having the baby up to her mother. In either case, in January of 1994, Asia Amber Alexis Nicolas made her debut into the world. Her mother said her name meant medicine woman, and her father was notified of her birth by a phone call from someone who had been there. I asked him how it felt when he found out he was a father.
Stopped to buy cards and cigars on the way in. I was so incredibly scared that, I probably could have moved a little bit faster, to be honest with you. But when I did see her, she was in the hospital waiting room where they keep all the little babies. What's that room called?
The nursery, I suggested.
Yeah. And she was maybe 2 handfuls, and I was impressed. I mean, she was, my baby girl, and I welled up with a whole bunch of pride. I then gone to go see Lisa, and she looked like that she had been through 12 rounds with Muhammad Ali, and she was up there with some of her family members, and I didn't stay along with her because she was just tuckered out. But it's I did go see the baby. I did go see her, and I think after I got out of the hospital, I went back to old neighborhood, got drunk. I was celebrating, grabbed some of my buddies, and tried to celebrate.
But how did you feel? I pushed.
Prideful, kind of scary. Realizing that I really got to get my shit together because now I've got someone on this earth that I've got to take care of, and it really lit that fire under my butt to get where I was going to go in life, meaning finish up that school program, get a better job.
It appears that Richard failed to make child support payments before there was an agreement in court. A paternity test was ordered at his request, and after it was certain that he was Asia's father, he signed a consent form for voluntary payments to be deducted from his payroll checks.
And I said to him, don't be a deadbeat dad. Back in the day, that was kind of big, and I'm like, you need to step up. And I know that he made that effort, and from there on, and that, it was important to him.
And then even today, my nephews will tell me, well, you know how we were raised, we have to take care of our responsibilities until they become adults. And that's what we're going to do. And that's how my son, my nephews, they all feel that way. And that's how they live. And that's how they treat their children.
His visits with Asia were not on any kind of regular schedule, but he would stop by the house sometimes to see her during his evening shifts on the ambulance. He also, despite her young age, talked with her on the phone almost daily. Richard was not the only member of his family that had contact with Asia.
He said, I have a baby girl. And I'm thinking, oh, what? Huh? Okay, wow, okay. And he was just so, tickled. He said, I have a baby girl, because I had just had my daughter. And my daughter was 10 pounds, 12 ounces. And Asia was 10 pounds, 13 ounces.
Gosh bless you.
So, yeah. So he was just like, sis, I have a daughter. And at that point, nothing else mattered. I was going to make it my business to see my niece. Mm-hmm. So I went to the baptism. I just kind of invited myself. I found out where she was, and from the first one when I saw her, that was Richard. She was just a breath of fresh air. She was just, oh my God, she was like an angel. And he was so proud and so tickled of her. He was trying to have a relationship so that he could spend time with his daughter, and the relationship between him and Lisa, the baby's mother, was very tumultuous. She really was not very open to him spending time with the baby, but she would allow me to spend time with the baby.
That's what I was going to ask you. I read, I think it was in the transcript, did you babysit for her?
Asia used to spend the weekends with me. So her and my older daughter were very, very close. Asia was a baby when my oldest was three or four, because my mother had just passed and my father had died before that. So I never got a chance to see Asia, but she would allow me to take Asia. She'd spend the night with me. I would take her to my family. I think her concern with Richard was he'd never had children before. I don't think it was a matter of she thought that he would hurt her. I think her concern was that, okay, you've never had children before, so I'm going to let you take this infant out all by yourself.
Right.
I'm struggling to find the words to describe Mary. She's tall and beautiful, and when I met with her the first time, she had on a gorgeous chunky necklace and matching bracelet, and I later found out that she had made those herself. More importantly, though, she is tough. She's had a lot of trauma in her life, but yet she just keeps going. When I first called to introduce myself, she told me this: please, don't take my silence for reluctance. It's just hard because I didn't lose just one person. I lost two, my niece, and then my brother. I think it would be fair to say that Richard wasn't always present for big events in Asia's life, but the time he did spend with her appeared to those around them to be enjoyable by Richard and Asia. About a week before Asia's murder, Richard had planned to go to the beach with Asia and her mother. At trial, both parties testified at the last minute it was decided that Asia's extended family would also be going. This is where the testimonies differ. Asia's mother testified that they stopped at a brown house because Richard said the owner owed him money. Richard's story was different.
I think that it was the weekend before the shooting. We had all gone out to Sandy Point Beach that Saturday and spent the whole day there. It was Lisa and I, Asia, and I would say about 10 of her nephews, cousins, and stuff over the summer. Lisa inherited like all these kids, and it was like a every summer thing. We packed up 2 cars, mine, hers, and
well, and that was a surprise, right?
I mean, it's we were all going to go down to the beach and stuff. So extra people were there. It's why not take them with us? It was a hot summer day, so why not go get wet? So that's what we did. Sandy Point is a state park, and it's in Essex, Maryland. It's just a fast way to get down to the beach if you're coming out of Baltimore City. Sandy Point is maybe 30 minutes off of the Baltimore City area. And it was a hot summer day. Asia was running around having fun. I got a super bad sunburn. We spent the day there, played with the kids all day long, ate some food, took my sunburnt self home and had a couple beers.
But did you stop at a brown house, I asked him?
No. I never went to a brown house.
If you didn't catch that, he said, no, there was no brown house.
My car was already gassed up. It's I still don't know how this brown house comes into play.
After months of phone calls, I knew that I needed to see him face to face before making a determination to proceed with the story. So I planned a trip to the Supermax facility where Richard is housed. I figured that, at best, I would discover that this is actually the case that I wanted to use for a podcast. And at worst, I would be Rachel's free legal assistant.
So today we're going to visit North Branch Correctional Institution, which is located in Cumberland, Maryland. It's about 2.5 hours west of my office in Howard County, Maryland. And it's primarily a scenic, bucolic ride through fields and eventually into the mountains of western Maryland.
I don't know what the word bucolic means, but the roads to Cumberland were mountainous, with such amazing views that I almost forgot that we were going to a place that housed such ugliness behind its walls.
And just outside the city of Cumberland lies a prison complex consisting of North Branch Correctional Institution and next door Western Correctional Institution. The maximum security inmates are primarily all housed out at one of those two facilities, with North Branch being the more heavy-duty upper level security and Western Correctional Institution also being maximum security but a lower level of maximum security. And Richard is housed at North Branch Correctional Institution. Currently, he was at Western Correctional Institution previously.
When we arrived, the first thing I noticed was that the doors to enter the building were massive. They were made of stainless steel and heavy to push open. When we entered the building, immediately in front of us there was a curved desk with a couple of people behind it, and a metal detector on either side, acting as a sort of gateway to whatever was beyond the large concrete walls. As we waited to be checked in, the guards next to us were taking off their belts and shoes and redressing after clearing the metal detector. I was thankful that Rachel had given me a heads up about appropriate dress for the occasion. My first question when entering a new experience is usually, what should I wear?
Well, it's more a question of what you should not wear. We have to pass through very sensitive metal detectors, so you cannot wear an underwire bra.
Ironically, I had made a trip to the Maryland Innocence Project the previous day and was also told a similar story about women's clothes being policed by prisons.
No belts with metal, no shoes with metal, glasses with metal, definitely no jewelry. All of those things will be screened. You can wear your shoes into the institution, but they're going to run your shoes or your belt or your watch through the metal detector. And then everything else like sunglasses, keys, things like that will all have to be stored in a locker. And if you are wearing an underwire bra, you will not enter the prison, because even if you offer to take off your bra, they also have a rule that you must wear a bra. So it's kind of a catch-22, and let's just say I have been caught in that. And also you cannot wear any sweater or jacket or blazer. You just have to kind of wear like one layer, I guess, because of the possibility that you could be concealing something inside your jacket. Even though the visits are no contact visits, meaning it's in a booth and we're separated from the inmate by glass, and there's absolutely no access to even pass a piece of paper, you still theoretically, I suppose, could pass an inmate en route to the visiting room.
I went to the website to check out the official dress code for prison visits.
All visitors, to include children, must dress appropriately for visitation. All clothing must cover from the neck to the kneecaps. The following types of clothing are not allowed to be worn: tube tops, tank tops or halter tops, see-through clothing, mini skirts, mini dresses, shorts, skirts, or culottes at or above the kneecaps, form-fitting clothes such as leotards, spandex, and leggings, clothes that expose a person's midriff, side, or back, tops or dresses that have revealing necklines and or excessive splits. Coats, jackets, shawls, and scarves will be placed in an appropriate area.
Am I the only one that thinks that this list is mostly directed at women? I also noticed that it doesn't say anything about underwire at all. It was a 2.5-hour drive to the prison. Imagine making the trip to visit your loved one and being refused entry because of the materials used in the making of your underwear. When it was our turn, I handed the woman behind the desk my ID and placed a pad of paper and the pen I was carrying into a tub to be ran through the x-ray machine. I took off my shoes and I was asked to pull out my pockets and walk through the metal detector. Nothing happened, which I suspect was a good thing. I had to hold up my left hand to get stamped by an invisible blacklight reflective ink. This part wasn't so bad, as it's pretty much the same procedure to enter and exit Chuck E. Cheese. Rachel was told that her black and silver binder clip would have to, quote, "wait here," by the lady behind the desk. Just past the entryway was a large room that I imagine is used to house overflow visitors. We visited on a Wednesday, a non-standard visiting day, so we were the only ones there. There were several rows of chairs, and there was a TV mounted on the wall in front of them. All of the walls were painted white and appeared to be made of cement bricks. A sign on the wall had the visiting rules in Spanish and English, and among the rules that I remember are no switching visitors, children must sit on a chair or the lap of the visitor, no kissing, and visitors and inmates may only embrace upon exiting the visits. We walked through the waiting room to a long hallway where a guard behind a dark-tinted window watched us hold our stamped hands under a black light. Then, we waited for a huge white door to open, and as we stepped inside, the door closed behind us, and we were trapped. It was a small hallway with another identical-looking futuristic door blocking our way. It kind of reminded me of something from Star Trek or Star Wars or some other space movie. After the first door had completely closed, the second door slowly started to open. Rachel asked if I was nervous. And to be honest, I wasn't. I was actually thinking that I had never missed my phone or digital recorder quite as much as I did standing there, trying to commit every detail of my visit to memory. Passing through what I've dubbed the airlock, we entered the visiting area. There was a raised guard platform looking out over the room. and there were 2 rows of visiting stations that looked kind of like study carrels you might find in a library. The insides of the 2 rows had a metal stool behind them, and the outside had 2 plastic green chairs that kind of reminded me of my grandma's house in the summer. There was a clock hanging above the guard's head, but it was stopped at 9:55. Along the wall, opposite of the door we entered, were several other doors, painted with a minty green color, and they had large numbers stenciled on them in black. I entered the first room and sat by myself to wait for Richard to arrive. I heard a noise, and Richard entered on the other side of the room, which was really 2 closet-sized rooms connected by a window of conductive glass. The glass was actually pretty amazing. I mean, I didn't have to use a phone or anything to hear what he was saying. Rather, the sound traveled through as if we were actually sitting right across from each other. I could hear him perfectly when he said my name in a way that, if it was written down, would have had a question mark behind it. I smiled and said hello, realizing that before this time, he didn't know what I looked like. I knew from my research that he was tall, but compared to my height, 5'2", he was a giant. He wore a white t-shirt and some jeans that had a few holes in them. He told me he'd like to get a new pair of jeans, but I told him not to worry. Distressed jeans are the style. I'm pretty sure that he was less than impressed with my fashion advice. I think at this point I realized this was the first time that I'd ever had a conversation with him that wasn't being monitored by the prison system. I might have entered a time warp at some point because after what seemed like just a few minutes, a guard knocked on the door and he asked if I'd be finished by 2 p.m. So when I asked him what time it was, I was surprised when he said 1:45 because I had arrived at the prison at 10:30 a.m. I had been in the room for close to 3 hours and I had no idea where those hours had went. I told the guard that it wouldn't be a problem and I finished up my conversation. I looked at Richard and told him I'd talk to him on Sunday, and then I left to the free world. And he went back to his cell. I waited in one of the green chairs for Rachel to finish up with her last client in a different room. There were 3 guards on the platform at this time, and so I asked him how many people were housed in the prison. An older guard told me that there were about 1,200, but that was down, and last year at one point they'd had about 1,500. He told me that it wasn't really an issue except for at meal times, when there was a little bit more freedom. Another guard, who looked about the same age as my 13-year-old little brother, said, "It's okay. It keeps us employed." Rachel came out of the room a minute or so later, and we walked back to the car. But first we stopped at our locker to get our sunglasses and the other items we'd deposited before going through security. So many thoughts were swirling in my brain, but among them was, what does going back to a cell look like for Richard?
Afterwards, normally I would get strip searched. That's where they strip you all the way down until you're naked, have you drop, squat, and cough, just in case you're hiding anything up inside your private areas, and good look at you. Make sure that you don't have anything. It's sometimes it's up to the officer's discretion as to who he's gonna strip search, but normally coming out of any type of visit.
As we walked back to the car, the wind was so strong I couldn't hear what Rachel was saying just a few steps in front of me. I looked at the mountain behind the prison and thought about how different my view was than Richard's.
I actually faced the same highway that you drove into the institute, and it's I like to watch the cars go by, and so it's I think it's better than facing the institution where all I'm doing is seeing more institution.
I would end up making another trip to the prison sometime later, but it was a much different experience because I was no longer a social worker helping with legal research. I was a podcaster advocating for justice.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
I would have been happy.
Yeah.
We got 60 seconds
Okay.
left. We're going to get cut off. Is it okay if I call you back next Sunday night?
What happened to Richard Nicolas? Next week on Convicted. You can see pictures, download the transcripts, and view other evidence documents at convictedpod.com. If you like what you hear, please give us a rating and a review on your podcast app. Convicted is hosted and produced by me, and the music and scoring is done by the immensely talented Blake Maples. You can see and hear more of his work at blakemaples.com. Special thanks to TJ Cunahan from the Pints and Puzzles podcast for his help with this episode. Be sure to subscribe so you're the first to hear the next episode of Convicted. Thanks for listening.
I'm going to have some fun, So, yeah, getting ready for the Super Bowl. Watch it.
No, okay, so I need to make a confession. You have to promise you're not going to stop talking to me.
Okay, fine.
I have no interest in sports at all.
Everybody watches football here, so, I'm not mad at you. I'm still...
All right, good. I was a little worried.